Being easy to love isn't always a compliment. Sometimes it's a survival skill your body built so young, you mistook it for your personality. If you've never once made a partner work to keep you happy, never disagreed, never inconvenienced anyone with a real preference, that's not low maintenance. That might be your nervous system, still trying to stay safe inside a danger that ended years ago. If you've ever been called the easiest girlfriend someone's ever had, and felt a strange hollowness underneath the compliment instead of pride, you are not ungrateful, and you're definitely not broken. You're describing something trauma researchers have a specific name for: the fawn response. Most people have heard of fight, flight, and freeze. Almost nobody talks about the fourth survival response, the one that doesn't look like fear at all. It looks like agreeableness. It looks like generosity. It looks, from the outside, like being a wonderful, low-drama partner. Here's what almost nobody explains correctly. Fawning isn't a personality trait, and it isn't a conscious choice to be kind. It's an automatic, body-level survival strategy, wired in below conscious awareness. It activates the exact same threat detection circuitry as the other three responses. The difference is that instead of fighting the threat or running from it, fawning appeases it. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your body learned that disappearing your own needs was the safest possible move. Why that strategy can quietly hollow out a relationship that looks perfect from the outside, and what it actually takes to let your nervous system learn that you really more, which with the elliten sats to good. Because the version of you that's always easy to love might be exhausted in ways you cheers, and fire never had permission to name. Picture this. A woman's partner asks where she wants to eat. She says she doesn't mind, genuinely believing it's true. He suggests a restaurant she actually dislikes. She agrees instantly, smiling, already calculating what she'll order that's tolerable enough. Later that night, she feels a low simmer of resentment she can't quite explain, because nothing happened. He didn't pressure her. He just asked a simple question, and she gave a simple, agreeable answer. This is where it gets uncomfortable. That resentment isn't random. It's the cost of a pattern repeating itself in real time, one small accommodation at a time, until the accumulated weight of never choosing for herself becomes its own quiet exhaustion. Psychotherapist Pete Walker, who first identified fawning as the fourth primary trauma response, alongside fight, flight, and freeze, described it as an automatic orientation toward appeasing a perceived threat, in order to prevent or reduce harm. Here's the layer underneath that almost never gets discussed. Fawning isn't the same thing as ordinary people-pleasing, even though they can look identical from the outside. Genuine kindness comes from a settled, regulated nervous system, and it feels expansive and freely chosen. Fawning comes from something closer to quiet terror, and it feels compulsive, urgent, like there was never actually another option on the table. The trouble is, both look exactly the same in the moment you're living them, which is precisely why fawning so often goes unrecognized for years, sometimes decades. But that's only half the story. Because fawning doesn't develop randomly, it tends to take root specifically in environments where fighting back or fleeing genuinely wasn't a safe or available option, often in childhood homes, where love was conditional, inconsistent, or tangled up with someone's unpredictable temper. If expressing a real preference, a real boundary, or a real disagreement was ever met with withdrawal, punishment, or someone else's emotional collapse, a young nervous system learns an efficient, brutal lesson. My needs are the danger. Disappearing them is how I stay loved. Here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. That lesson doesn't expire just because the original threat is long gone. It simply transfers itself onto every future relationship that even faintly resembles the original danger, which, in dating, can mean almost any moment involving disagreement, disappointment, or the small risk of someone pulling away. Here's the deeper truth this entire video has been building toward. Being effortlessly easy to love was never actually about him. It was about an old, well-rehearsed strategy for staying safe, dressed up convincingly as a relationship style. Think of it like this. Imagine your nervous system as a building's emergency lighting system, the kind that only activates during a power outage. For years, in a household where conflict genuinely felt dangerous, that emergency system learned to switch on constantly. flooding every interaction with the same instruction. Agree, appease, make yourself smaller, keep everyone calm, survive. Eventually, that emergency lighting became the only lighting you ever knew how to use, even in rooms that were never actually dark, even in relationships that were never actually dangerous. This is why you can be with someone genuinely safe, someone who would welcome your real opinions, your real boundaries, your real disagreements, and still feel your body automatically dimming itself the moment any friction appears. Because the emergency system doesn't check current conditions before activating. It just runs its old program, the one that kept you safe once, regardless of whether safety is actually at risk right now. This is also why partners of people who fawn often describe a strange, hard-to-articulate sense that something's missing. Even when everything on the surface looks agreeable and easy, they're sensing the absence of a real person showing up fully. Because a nervous system in fawn mode isn't actually relating. It's managing, monitoring, performing safety, all while the authentic self stays carefully hidden several rooms away. This is what's actually happening when you can't quite name a preference, can't access what you actually want. Even in low-stakes moments, like choosing a restaurant, you've spent so long disconnecting from your own needs as a survival strategy that the needs, themselves, have become genuinely hard to locate. Not because you don't have any, but because finding them was never safe enough to practice. And here's the part that should genuinely change how you see this pattern. Emergency lighting can be turned off. It takes deliberately testing, again and again, whether the room is actually dark before reaching for it, and discovering, slowly, that in this particular room, with this particular person, it usually isn't. So, how do you actually start interrupting a pattern this deeply wired? Here's what genuinely helps. First, practice noticing the body before the behavior. Fawning often happens faster than conscious thought, so the first checkpoint isn't your words, it's your body. Notice the instant tightening, the urge to smooth things over, the reflexive smile arriving, before you've even registered what you actually feel. That noticing, on its own, doesn't require you to change anything yet. It just starts separating the automatic response from the actual you underneath it. Second, practice expressing tiny, low-stakes preferences on purpose, repeatedly. Choosing the restaurant once, naming the movie you'd actually prefer, saying out loud that you're a little tired tonight. These small, almost insignificant moments are training grounds. Each one teaches your nervous system new evidence. A preference was stated, and the relationship survived it. Nobody collapsed. Nobody left. Third, get curious about the specific fear underneath the urge to appease, rather than just suppressing the urge itself. Ask yourself honestly, in a quiet moment afterward, what did I think would happen if I'd said what I actually wanted? Usually, underneath the immediate discomfort, there's an old, specific fear, abandonment, anger, disappointment, that belonged to a much earlier relationship, not necessarily this one. Fourth, let a partner see you disappointed or annoyed occasionally, on purpose, as practice. If your pattern has been flawless agreeableness, allowing a small, honest moment of friction to exist without immediately smoothing it over, is uncomfortable, specifically because it's over, not because it's actually dangerous. Discomfort here is often the exact signal that real change is happening. Fifth, understand that healing a trauma response isn't primarily an intellectual project. Pete Walker's framework and modern trauma researchers consistently emphasize that fawning lives in the body, which means insight alone, however accurate, rarely changes the pattern on its own. Real change tends to happen through repeated embodied experience, small risks taken, survived, and slowly recognized as safe. Far more than through understanding the mechanism, intellectually, even as thoroughly as this video has just walked you through it. Here's the empowering part of all of this. You were never simply easy to love. You were resourceful enough, as a child, to find a way to stay safe and stay connected, even in circumstances that gave you very few good options. That same resourcefulness, redirected now toward learning that your needs are allowed to exist out loud, is exactly what's going to let you be loved fully, instead of just safely. You don't have to disappear to be loved. You only ever thought you did, and that lesson, learned so young, can still be unlearned now. If this gave language to something you've lived, but never quite had words for, tell me in the comments. Have you ever realized you genuinely didn't know what you wanted, because wanting things never felt safe to practice? Let's talk about it down there. And if you want more breakdowns like this one, on the trauma patterns quietly shaping how we love, subscribe, because there's a lot more of this we're going to unpack together.